Hi, everybody, and welcome into the ConTinual Comics Track, which is sponsored by Heroes Aren't Hard to Find and their annual Heroes Convention. I'm your host, Nancy Northcott, and tonight's topic is romancing the superheroes. My guests this evening are Jeanne Adams, Alexandra Christian, Nicole Kurtz, Darin Kennedy, and Gail Z. Martin. And we'll start by having each of them introduce themselves and tell us a little about their background with comics. We'll start with Jeanne.
Hey, I'm Jeanne Adams. I write paranormal romantic suspense, romantic suspense, urban fantasy, and space adventure with Nancy Northcott. And my interest in comics really started as a kid. I started reading comics, but mostly I love the movies, the superhero movies, even the bad ones.
Gail, how about you?
Hi, I'm Gail Z. Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write urban fantasy, epic fantasy, near future, post-apocalyptic, and more. As Morgan Bryce, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. I would have loved to have loved comics when I was a kid, but my mother was a teacher of that generation who thought they rotted your brain. So I only ever got to read them at the dentist's office, which is probably one reason why I never really minded going to the dentist. And so I feel like I've got a lot of catching up to do, although I absolutely love the Marvel movies. And so most of my knowledge comes from the movies, not the comics.
Nicole?
And you have spectacular teeth.
Oh, my name is Nicole Kurtz, and I write science fiction mysteries, fantasy mysteries, weird westerns, and horror. My love affair with comics started when I was actually a teenager. I grew up with the 90s X-Men comics, and so from there I kind of branched out and read other things. I absolutely love Nightwing or Dick Grayson. I love the movies. But my big love is for the DC animated movies. I have watched all of them, and I own a way too many to count at this point because they just keep pumping them out. But I like the DC animated cartoons as well as the comics.
Darin?
Hi, I'm Darin Kennedy. I write paranormal thriller and contemporary fantasy, and my short stuff is more horror, and my most recent book is my first young adult. And let's see. I grew up watching Super Friends, Battle of the Planets. So I got my superheroes from both major land masses in the world. I remember my very first comic, I think, was a Justice League that had Black Canary and Green Arrow in it. I can still picture it. I picked up an X-Men 137, Death of Phoenix, from a small gas station in the mountains while I was on vacation with my family in 1980. And I got my Daredevil 181, Death of Elektra, at the Quick Check in Midway, North Carolina. I can still remember picking it up. I have more comic books than you can possibly imagine 2 floors up from where I'm sitting right now. And I love all the Marvel movies, and I just binged the first 4 episodes of WandaVision last night, and I'm hoping we can talk about that because that's awesome.
Alexandra?
I'm Alexandra Christian, and I write paranormal and contemporary romance. I dabble a little bit in horror here and there, just for variety. I'm probably more of a TV and movie comics person. I didn't really discover reading comic books like in a serious sort of way until I married my husband, who's a huge comic book fanatic. And he brought many comic books into the house. So that was the first time I had ever read a bunch of comics, kind of like starting with, like the beginning of a cycle and going on to the end. I had read like comics here and there as a kid, just kind of picking them up, people giving them to me to kind of entertain me. But it was mostly like, I love the Batman TV show. Batman is still my favorite superhero. And, just kind of went on through the movies. If there's a superhero movie, I'm all about it. Love them.
Well, that's quite a range of different backgrounds for the comic books and the superheroes. I grew up reading comic books, and I've watched the TV shows and the movies, but comics started it for me. So that's kind of shapes, I guess, everything that I do looking at that. But since the topic is technically romancing the superheroes, what's everybody's favorite? Now pick one, and we'll circle back around to this, but pick one for now. what is your favorite superhero romantic relationship? And Gail, we'll start with you.
Probably Pepper and Iron Man, although they have problems. All of them have problems, but yeah, probably Pepper.
Gail?
Oh no.
He froze.
I think Ironmonger must have gotten her. We lost you for a second, Gail. You
We
were
lost
right in
you
the
for a
middle of.
sec, Gail.
Oh, I said probably Pepper and Iron Man.
And why is that?
And that's where we lost you.
Oh, okay. I'd say probably because although there are some real relationship and equality issues, she's still probably one of the most equal partners, at least in the movies. And so I like that better than ones who have to die before the whole series begins, just so the guy has motivation.
Yeah, we don't like it when you fridge women. No,
You could do a whole panel on fridging,
you
actually.
could actually.
Nicole, what about you?
So, historically, my favorite couple is Nightwing and Starfire. However, currently right now, I love Harley and Poison Ivy. As a couple, as destructive as they are externally, they are very supportive with each other and loving with each other within the confines of their relationship.
That's cool.
Darin?
Me, Scott Summers and Jean Grey.
Yeah, classic.
Cyclops and Phoenix, Marvel Girl / whatever her code name is for this 20 minutes. When your first issue of X-Men ever is X-Men 137, where Chris Claremont writes the most like soap opera dripping death scene of a character, and it's just, I still love him. And honestly, I don't collect comics anymore. And if you really ask me, like, what is the number one reason, it's the fact that Scott Summers went to Emma Frost. And I hate to say it, but like, it's like you took like my favorite guy and had him cheat on what is my favorite romantic relationship. And I just, ever since then, I'm like, y'all did that because why? And so I'm like, no, Scott belongs with Jean, and as long as Emma Frost is in the picture, I will not be returning to the world of comics. But 20 years was long enough.
Alexandra?
Okay, I'm gonna totally get zinged on this. I know, just go ahead and get ready. You can think poorly of me later. I don't care. My favorite romantic entanglement, even as unhealthy and horrible as it is Joker and Harley.
Yep.
I love Joker and Harley. I think they're goofy. They're completely destructive. They have a terrible relationship. But they also, I mean, and I like Harley and Joker as far as like Batman cartoon Harley and Joker, where it's just so goofy. I mean, she gets mad at him and hits him with a hammer. He gets mad at her and like fires her into outer space with a rocket. I mean, that kind of, I mean, it's just silly and I just love it. But their relationship is very problematic on an intellectual level, but I have to say I love them. I would love to say that Batman and Catwoman are my favorite, and I do love them, but I always go back to Harley and Joker.
Jeannie?
Well, I'm sort of the oddball, I guess, is that my favorite one is Sue Storm and Reed Richards, from the Fantastic Four.
They're awesome.
They're mostly because they meet on equal ground. I mean, they're both scientists. They're both doing their thing. You know, they both get blasted by the meteor, and they both have to deal with all the stuff that comes with it, and they manage to deal with it together. So I always like that. And the second would probably be Batman and Catwoman, because it's just so wrong and right at the same time.
So, I got a question, Nancy.
Yeah?
What's everybody's favorite Batman Catwoman?
Ooh. That's a tough one. What is everybody's favorite Batman and Catwoman? Just jump in and.
That's hard.
Tim Burton
I'm sorry.
movie.
I'm
Tim
old
Burton
school.
movie universe, most definitely.
It's got to
What?
be Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael
Yeah.
Keaton's Batman. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know. I got to go all the way back to the 69 series.
Adam West and Julie Newmar.
Oh, yeah.
Woohoo!
Yeah, they're pretty good too.
Yeah.
They're pretty good
Yes.
too.
Yes. Because he's just so uptight about the fact that he's attracted to her. It's so funny.
I
Yeah.
still think they are the best one by far. I agree.
We know Tom King, in his run on Batman recently, played with that relationship. He used it and kind of developed it. And while there are things about it that I don't like it as a relationship, the art was gorgeous. So that's always a point in any comic book's favor. But in Batman Annual #2, he wrote a retrospective of their relationship called Date Night's Last Rites. And that was one of the most moving comic book stories I've ever read. So my favorite Batcat, if I have to pick, is probably Adam West and Julie Newmar. But I kind of have to tip the hat to Tom King for the way he developed that relationship, not so much in the book itself, but in the annual. And it's really, it was quite a story. It was just beautifully done there. But actually, I wanted to put in a plug for my favorite comic book relationship, which I go back even farther because the first Legion of Superheroes story I read was a Silver Age story.
Mm-hmm.
And Saturn Girl, who's a telepath, and Lightning Lad, who, as you might think, shoots lightning, were two of the founding members of Legion of Superheroes. And they were about to have an election, the Legion was, for the next Legion leader. And the Naltorians, who can see the future, sent the Legion a warning that they had envisioned, their seers had envisioned that a legionnaire would die in battle against Zaryan the Conqueror, who was on his way to Earth to conquer Earth. Well, Saturn Girl saw that and she destroyed it, so no one else would see it. And then she stole the election, got herself elected Legion leader, and kicked everybody out of the Legion. And they were all furious with her, including Cosmic Boy, who was the third founder and one of her best friends. But Lightning Lad was tipped off. And that's a long thing that you have to understand the Legion's complex history. And those of you who are Legion fans know who Mon-El was and all that. But let's just suffice it to say he was tipped off what had happened, and he believed it because he didn't want to believe that about her anyway. And he went off and chased her and died for her. And it's just like, oh my goodness, how could I not love that? And then the Legion tried to bring him back to life, and she tried to sacrifice herself, and they made such a good team. And she was very assertive and strong, and he was very amiable and easygoing. And I just loved the combination. And I can't let that go without plugging that pair, because if I had to pick one relationship in the comics that's the only one I could read about going forward, it would be that one.
Ooh, can I give one last shout out to Storm and T'Challa? Because that actually, Eric Jerome Dickey wrote that series of Storm and T'Challa, and it was, for me, the first time seeing superheroes that were Black. Storm was always a fan favorite anyway for me, but to see her paired with a powerful king and to actually be a legitimate queen. She's already like a goddess. And so it was just, and he brought it was just a fantastic run during the height of Eric Jerome Dickey's like writing career. He was super popular. He was everywhere. And here he is writing this Marvel, one of the greatest love stories, Black love stories in Marvel Comics at the time. And so I do own all of them in the plastic, boarded. Of course, I've already, but that is one of my favorite couples. I would love to see them do that on like the big screen.
The art in that was
the art is
stunning.
yes.
It's beautiful.
When did they do those, Nicole?
It was in the mid 90s when they did that series.
Mid 90s?
You know, in the X-Men movies, when Storm is about to blast somebody, that's just awesome. And to see that on the big screen with T'Challa would just be awesome.
So
I know
cool.
they're not going to do it because they're not recasting that role, but it would have been fabulous to see, like maybe in a flashback or something like that, an alternate, universe.
I think they're probably going to do some alternate universe stuff because I think they'll probably do Michael B. Jordan in an alternate universe and have him be T'Challa. But
Let's
see.
hope so, because that was my favorite superhero pairing would be him and me. I mean, bring it on.
Actually,
I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
well, Superman and Lois, Black Panther and you, why not?
That's right. That's right.
Well, I mean, you bring up Superman and Lois. That's probably one of the longest standing pairings, isn't it? Besides Saturn Girl and Lightning Lad.
Oh, they're way older than Saturn Girl and Lightning Lad. Yeah.
And
It's
that show comes out in a month.
Which one?
Lois
The
and
new
Clark.
Superman and Lois.
Are they doing a new one?
Yeah, it's called
hadn't heard
Superman
of
on the CW, right?
Yeah.
They introduced Supergirl, and then a couple seasons in, they introduced that version of Superman, which is so far superior to what they're doing on the DC big screen right now. It's not funny. He is Superman. He's as good as we've had since Christopher Reeve, as far as I'm concerned. And their Lois is totally on par. But they've been in a lot of episodes of Supergirl and the crossovers, but they get their own series like next month. It's starting. So I'm looking forward to watching that.
Me too. And that actually, does anybody remember Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
During medical school.
Yeah.
My one show I watched.
The only one you were allowed.
I watched ER too.
Well, it sort of seemed like once Lois and Clark got together, they didn't know, they being the writers and the producers, didn't know what to do with them.
Right.
And it was kind of like the show seemed to go downhill from there.
Yeah.
And
Meanwhile, you would have thought that they would have planned for that. I mean, the name of the show is The Adventures of Lois and Clark.
Oh,
Well,
I think that's kind of one of the things that I run into with a lot of the, not just the superhero pairings, but a lot of Hollywood approach to pairings is that it's only interesting until they get together. And then established couples are by definition boring. And you either have to have triangles and relationship angst and amnesia and all this, but God forbid they actually be together. And I found a quote by Marvel editor-in-chief Joe Quesada, who said that he thinks marriage ages the characters, making them less appealing to young readers and lessens the dramatic soap opera possibilities. And so if the people at the top think being in an established relationship makes you an old fuddy-duddy and unappealing, A, I think they have personal issues, and B, how are you ever going to get past that with the writers? Because and so your relationships are kind of doomed from the start.
Yeah.
I just think it's
like they're assuming that the majority of the people that read comic books are still kids that are under 18, and that's just not true anymore.
No.
Well,
I just think it's horse hockey that you can't. I mean, Lord knows relationships are the biggest crucible of all, and that's one of the biggest problems I have with Spider-Man and Mary Jane. Mm-hmm. There's this constant churn of angst, and then there's Gwen, and then there's this other thing, and then it's like, really.
Well, they had Peter Parker make a deal with the devil to bring back Aunt May, but what he had to give up was that he ever married Mary Jane, so they could abolish the fact that Peter Parker was married. They did that a while back, right?
I heard that. Yeah,
that was horrid.
Spider-Man because of that, actually. And there was actually one of the editors at DC Comics in the last couple of years said, you can't write an interesting story with a married couple. To which my response is, really, have you read J.D. Robb?
You can. You really can.
Yeah, 53 books later, she's still going.
They somehow kept
moonlighting syndrome from back 20 years
syndrome
ago when they finally got Bruce Willis and what's her name together.
Sybil Shepherd.
Yeah. But I think that there's a lot of it that's just a Hollywood mindset because most of those people are married like 5 or 6 times themselves. That this never lasts. This can't work. This is boring, and you bring that preconception to your work. Of course, it's going to fail. But meanwhile, out in the real world, lots of people are making it work.
Right.
Yep. And
in interesting ways.
Yeah.
Yes.
The They managed to keep Lois and Clark pretty interesting as a pair on a Smallville, I thought, because they let them get together, but then that didn't get stale. You just have to figure out how to not make it stale. It's not like Lois Lane's not going to go get in trouble whether she's dating Clark or not.
True.
It's kind of what she does.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, getting back to Nicole's favorite couple of Nightwing and Starfire, they were about to get married in the Titans. And then I've kind of mercifully blanked on that. I was reading the comic at the time. It had something to do
got possessed, right?
Yeah, they were about to get married and someone like blew it up. There was a bombing.
Wasn't it Evil Raven?
I believe so.
I think Evil Raven messed it up.
It was terrible.
Was 50.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Okay. So that was.
Got it upstairs.
And what really, so I think, and I really like this about Nightwing, is his ability to be the anti-Bruce, right? He's well-rounded, he's well-adjusted, if you compare him to Bruce. Remember, we're only comparing him to Bruce. He's the guy that everyone in the Justice League trusts because Dick is that good guy, right? The good guy. Because you can't actually talk to Bruce, but you can talk to Dick and he'll talk to Bruce, right? He's kind of that adversary personality. I think he warrants a warming, supportive relationship. And I don't think, again, because of what Gail's saying, what you guys have all talked about is this preconceived notion, which kind of like echoes from the 50s, right? That women aren't interesting unless they're attached to a man. Mm-hmm. And even then, it's the ball and chain. It's the, you've given up your manhood to your wife. This kind of misogynistic viewpoint that kind of permeates comics in general kind of continues to sabotage really good characters. I hate that because I would love to see what he would do and how much different he could evolve as a character, right? Mm-hmm. If he was with his love, whether that's Barbara or whether that's Starfire, and having them together fight crime and live their lives and be superheroes and then adjust. So
it seems like, I'm sorry, Nicole, I didn't mean to.
No, you're fine. That's all I had to say. I was rambling.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that, as the other romance novelists here will see, a lot of people think that writing a relationship story is soft or squishy, or, it's like they're almost afraid to write it. And so I think that's some of the problem too, is they're afraid to write the relationship story. And so because they just kind of.
Relationship can be hard and pounding.
It is hard.
Right. And so I think maybe that has a little bit to do with why they never want to let anybody have a relationship that lasts for more than, a story.
Well, that was always my biggest disappointment. Yeah. Daredevil was one of my favorite comic characters. And that was always my biggest disappointment, was that Elektra met him toe to toe and was better in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And then they go and kill her off because he has to be the centerpiece. I'm like, really? Don't do that.
To be fair, they brought her back to life 9 issues later.
Yes, but
the other thing,
she wasn't even dead a year. Even Jean Grey was going, damn, that was fast.
But the other thing that they break the couples up because it seems to be this false choice for the woman between being in a relationship and having independence or having a career. And I'm sorry, that is so 1945.
That's what I'm saying.
Why can't she go into law enforcement? Why can't Batman didn't have special powers. Why can't you train her like Batman learned? Why can't she either be in some sort of crime fighting or be a district attorney, be something else, and still have a relationship? That goes on all the time in real life. And so comics seem to kind of lag behind the real world by decades.
So Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, she actually left superhero fighting to have that life with him, to be with him in a couple situation with a child. She left that life, right? And so she does still act as a private investigator, but she's got a husband who's a superhero and a child. And so I don't know why, but they made her give up something, right? They made her give up being a superhero. They both couldn't be superheroes, which I thought was interesting.
That's actually something I love. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
That's actually something I loved about what Pixar did with The Incredibles.
Mm-hmm.
And here they are, the superheroes. And in the second one, he gives up everything because she's going back to work as a superhero. And he's minding the kids and doing everything. And I thought, here you go. That's good.
It can be done.
I totally believe the thing that so far The Incredibles is the best Fantastic Four movie that's been made by a country mile. Like,
Yes.
It's more Fantastic Four than any movie, and quite frankly, most comic books called Fantastic Four. I mean, that it gets to the heart of it, and it's like the old Warner Brothers cartoons. It's so funny and awesome on so many multiple levels. Anybody can enjoy that movie.
And it's kind of the Fantastic Five because Jack's there too.
Yes.
Jack's my favorite.
Picking up on what Nicole was saying about the woman always has to give up something and she can't go on and be independent and have a career. One of the prime examples where that wasn't required for a long time was Nightwing and Oracle.
Yes.
And so, I mean, if y'all haven't guessed, Nicole and I are both huge Nightwing fans. Preferred
really
for him. I don't think I didn't hear that sarcasm, but Barbara made herself Oracle, and honestly, this is not exactly on topic, but if you are looking for a comic book that has a wonderful character study in it, the Batman Chronicles #5 is Barbara in the aftermath of the shooting, written by John Ostrander and Kim Yale, and that is about Barbara Gordon's decision to make herself into Oracle, and it is a brilliant character study of a comic book character. So she's Oracle and she's functioning independently, and they kind of retconned her and Dick having been together before because originally there was an 8-year age gap, and so until he was an adult that wasn't going to work anyway. But they picked him up as adults and retconned a history for them that Barbara had supposedly walked away from because she couldn't jump around rooftops anymore.
Right.
And it was an interesting exploration of their relationship dynamic. And then Birds of Prey happened. And Oracle's running the Birds of Prey, which is all women, kicking butt, every issue. And she's in a relationship with the hottest guy in the DC universe. Apologies to those of you who are fans of others, but we all know that's true. And
Guy Gardner?
Oh, yeah, really?
No.
And that relationship was doing really well until Devin Grayson broke them up and brought in a problematic storyline with a character named Tarantula. But that relationship lasted for several years and it was going strong. And maybe the key to it was she had the Birds of Prey book and he had the Nightwing book. And every once in a while they guest star in each other's books, but they weren't in the same book.
Right.
So there was no worry that in some way her having a crime fighting career was a clash with his or whatever they get in their heads. I don't know what they think. But
do you think, and I'm sorry, but do you think that one of the issues around the situation with our couples is a lack of having female comic book writers in the room?
Oh,
yes.
Absolutely.
And at the top.
And at the top, right.
And I think so much of it is still very much focused through the male gaze, because a lot of the women who are there, who are love interests, have glamour jobs, not real people jobs. They're, they're celebrities, they're actresses or models or TV news anchors. Why not cops? Why not lawyers? Why not, all these social workers? Why not all these other things? And it's because those aren't careers. And this is still getting filtered through the gaze of a horny 14-year-old
right
grew up
That's
in
like, does anybody still have any freaking clue what Vicky Vale's job was in Batman?
She was a reporter.
She's a photojournalist.
You're right.
She goes and takes photos. But I'm sorry, and I'm coming from the Tim Burton Batman world. So if she has a more intellectual job in the comic books, please correct me. But she's a photojournalist, and then they have Kim Basinger playing her. Does anybody believe that Kim Basinger was writing the intellectual captions on those photos? I don't think so. So I'm still wondering, what the hell was she doing? I mean,
Well,
she goes
and
to Corto
photojournalists-
Maltese. Like, I
Yeah.
still don't know where Corto Maltese is. And she's taking pictures of dead bodies. And I'm like, that's her job? I mean, I don't know.
Well, then
Well, you can be a photojournalist in a war zone, and that's like totally legit and
Yeah.
badass. And there are a
Yeah.
lot of people who have done that. But that's not your average, let's just take pretty pictures.
Right, exactly. And my favorite part is when she goes to the museum thinking she's meeting Bruce, and she's actually meeting the Joker. And she brings her portfolio, and it's like Vogue, Vanity Fair, catalog, Corto Maltese War. Like, they just said, hey,
Those don't go together.
right. I'm like, I think she really did a great job photographing the models at New York Fashion Week. How about we have her come and take pictures of the war in Corto Maltese? That never made sense to me as a child.
Well, they did get a little better on the DC Universe Titan show.
Yes.
Donna Troy is not a love interest for Dick Grayson. She's his sister of the heart.
Right.
But in the episode that introduced her, which is my favorite episode of that show because they just nailed those characters, Dick has to go with Donna to an exhibition of her work. And they kind of played it for laughs because Dick spends his time running around the rooftops of Gotham punching bad guys. He's terrible at small talk. And so Donna kind of leaves him there. But all the pictures were war zone type pictures that Donna had taken. And so it's nice to see that kind of move along.
Yeah.
But, you know, there was a big argument on Twitter recently because people were making jokes about Dick Grayson's booty and treating him essentially
like an object. Which,
That's
you know,
basically the DC version of America's ass, right?
yes.
yeah. And you know, there's nothing wrong with that, except that seems to be what people focus on with that character.
Right.
And it's what you all were saying earlier about the male gaze. Somebody said, well, if you're so upset about Grayson's butt, why aren't you objecting to all this stuff about female superheroes? And it's like, you start objecting to that stuff, you're at it all day. Women falling out of their tops, women whose butts aren't covered, women who have nipple bumps on their costumes, Catwoman's costume that's cut away on the side so it actually doesn't support her breast. Yes, it would be wonderful to hop around rooftops in that outfit. Like,
She blacked both of her eyes. It's like Eon Flux. I loved that cartoon. I absolutely love that cartoon. But if she was wearing that outfit, she would have a tremendous wedgie, and she blacked both of her eyes.
And
Well-
that's not, and her relationship with Trevor is terrible. So
Yeah.
Yes,
it's really not
Yes,
a good relationship at all.
but I was also intrigued by that relationship too. So does it really surprise you that I have no
No.
whole Joker Harley thing? Anyway,
I'm
Well,
sorry.
We
Gail.
did get one Batman costume nipples. It's
Yeah.
not
Yes.
really, you know, the best one, but we did get one.
Yeah.
Two.
we did.
You know, if you look at a lot of the superhero costumes, not so much Wonder Woman, but any of the ones whose costumes look like they're spandex, there are a lot of authors who cannot resist just putting that little bump on the tip of the boob line. And it's like,
Yeah.
really?
Because they're
And so
14.
you start objecting to
Yeah.
that. That's all you have time to do, you know?
I don't know about you ladies, but like I have lots of shirts that have like little nipple pads on them. You know.
Oh.
Yes. I don't
Pretty
understand.
gay.
Like,
You
I
know,
think- yeah.
go ahead, Nicole.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think one of the ones that they did best, I have issues with the movie, I do, but one of the ones they did best was Aquaman. The costume was very faithful to the comics. The relationship was equal between I forget her name and an Aquaman. The Queen has a big role and she's sort of fairly powerful. But the costume, none of the costuming was like, oh, look, nipple bumps. So I was pretty keen on that.
They did
Without
really
it,
And
well
they're
with
too
the-
busy trying to make Nicole Kidman look like she was 25. You know,
I know.
they used all of their budget on that.
Yeah.
They did really well with costumes in Black Panther as well.
Oh, those are great.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
one of the
see,
best
they didn't do stupid shit in Black Panther. One of the best movies ever made because they didn't do stupid shit in it.
Mm.
I think the thing that makes Black Panther so awesome is the fact that it's not like, how would we make costumes now? It's if this bad stuff had never happened to this country hundreds of years ago, what would everybody be wearing now. And then that's what they did. And
Yeah.
that's what makes it so, I mean, it just feels so real.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think there were a lot of articles about people going, I want to go to Wakanda. And you're like, it doesn't really exist, unfortunately. But
Right.
I mean, there were people like, I want to go
Wouldn't
to
it be awesome if it did?
we all want to go to Wakanda.
Yeah.
Well,
But I even like how they actually make that into, I mean, they do it jokingly, but that's actually kind of a plot point. General Okoye talks how many times in the scene where they go to Busan, and she's talking about, like, first of all, she's complaining about having to wear the stupid hair. And she's like, I hate this hair. And then she's talking about, like, when she finally can, like, rip the hair off and kick the guy's ass. She's, it's like oh, thank God,
It's like a relief.
It's a relief. And I just thought that was really, really cool how they did that. She, to me, she is like the perfect female superhero. I think she needs her own movie.
Like the underpinnings of the relationship and difficulties and trauma with Black women in our hair that has occurred in this country. That scene was very pivotal for and resonated with the projected audience.
Well, and for me, the first time I read a Black Panther comic, I loved those comics because as a kid, teenager, I saw those and I wanted to be Dora Milaje because those people were powerful and they were capable and they were smart. And there they were on the page, as opposed to every other comic of that time period where the women are all going, oh, save me.
Damsel in distress. Yeah. And I feel like we haven't moved very far from that, which is why you still have the issue with couples in comics and the romance being kind of like, oh, it's a dead zone. It's because they don't feel like women are valuable unless they're objects or people to be rescued.
I think the movies did better with that.
Yeah, I know it's not a comic book, but the relationship that I always loved was in the original, not the Marvel Avengers, but the British TV show Avengers with Steve and Mysterio.
Yep.
Yeah.
I wanted that leather catsuit so bad when I was a kid. I aspired to that leather catsuit. But, she kicked ass in the mid-1960s. And while there was a flirtation with Steed and they were both super cool, they didn't have to be together. And I love that.
Yeah.
And if they could do that in the 1960s, like comics.
It's like when Mulder and Scully got together in the X-Files, like here she is, she's a doctor, she's uber smart, she's this high, incredibly intelligent scientist, but all she's really known for is getting pregnant by Mulder. Like seriously? Like she was just fabulous. And then they the minute that the relationship between them like became more than just a platonic work thing, oh gosh, they did not know what to do with Scully.
Well, there was another relationship.
Doctor, she couldn't figure out how not to do that.
You would think.
Well, back in the 1960s, there was another relationship similar to that, and it was in classic Doom Patrol. If you've only seen Doom Patrol on the DC Universe version, it bears no resemblance to classic Doom Patrol. But Elastigirl in that one could shrink and grow. And she was an ex-movie star, like on the current TV show. And Steve Dayton, who they made a big deal about being the world's 5th richest man, had invented a helmet that gave him kind of mental powers. And he was always wanting Rita to hook up with him so that they could be a couple. And, I think he had in mind a mansion instead of a cottage and whatever the mansion equivalent of a white picket fence was. So he was always, well, Rita, you're not giving me the time of day. And Rita's go, I'm busy here. I got this supervillain to deal with. We'll get back to that in a minute. And it really stood out in the comics of the period because even Wonder Woman had to be periodically saved by Steve. Yes. So let's switch gears for a minute and think about what superhero relationships do you wish they had just not gone there for? Who wants to start?
To clarify, people that got together that they should not have?
Yes, that it didn't work.
I'll go back to Scott Summers and Emma Frost. Scott Summers belongs with Jean Grey.
I feel like you've got some feelings about that, Darin.
Yeah. Speechless. I wish they hadn't created a love triangle between Wolverine and Jean Grey and
I haven't been reading X-Men lately because into the new run, there was an issue that was just in the current world situation. I just couldn't deal with it. So I read that issue and kind of put it aside. But I think Scott, Logan, and Jean are now living together on the moon. And there were some hints that it was not just.
It's just like an adventure. I thought it was like taking their relationship to a whole new level.
Jeannie, did you read all the Chris Claremont X-Men books back in the day when it was the three of them going at it?
I read some of them, just enough that because at that age I wasn't really keyed in. It just irritated the shit out of me.
I always thought it was one of the more interesting thing, like right there in the early Chris Claremont era, is like Wolverine's trying to be honorable, but he's kind of not, and Jean's trying to be honorable, but she's kind of not, and Scott's kind of like, whoa, what's happening? I always thought it was a really cool interaction.
It reminded me of the Lancelot Guinevere Arthur thing, which consistently pisses me off.
Yes.
There's a reason it reminded you of that.
Yes, I know. But it just makes me so crazy because it disempowers the woman in the situation. And then it makes the guys look like complete assholes.
It reduces the woman to a trophy. And that's horrible.
And you've got Jean Grey, who's super powerful, either as Jean Grey or Dark Phoenix. And she's this massively powerful person. And then the
level
whole thing
5.
Like,
she's a level 5 mutant. she can decimate like everything.
I'm actually going to be really brave and be the guy with the Y chromosome. I'm going to disagree. I never thought that they reduced Jean back in the day to it. I mean, it was very clear Jean was top dog and everybody else was dog biscuits. It was very much Logan loved her and Scott loved her, and she kind of liked them both, but I never got trophy from that. I got that they both saw Jean for what she was, which is awesome. But maybe I'm just crazy. I don't know.
Well, I think I probably am taking it more from the way they did it with the movies than I am from the
movies are garbage with that. They didn't.
Yeah, it just made me insane.
Yeah, I'm talking about the actual source material. It was actually very, very good and done well.
I'm
go ahead.
going to say Spider-Man and MJ and Gwen, because that was just a train wreck. And I didn't read it in the comics, but from the movies, it was a train wreck to start with. It got worse. And from everything I've read, all of her relationships were abusive and gaslighting and manipulative men. And it's like, really? Why? Why is this even necessary? Because he didn't need a love interest. He's, a 17-year-old boy who's learning to spin webs. He doesn't need, it wasn't necessary to the story. And apparently nobody was going to let it be anything really solid.
Are you talking about Gwen Stacy?
Yeah.
I missed the word. I just was curious, making sure I knew who you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
So I really dislike the Green Lantern Vixen Hot Girl triangle from the Justice League. I really didn't like it. I felt like Jon Stewart, I actually felt like Vixen deserved better, to be honest. She wasn't as well known a character within the Justice League like fandom in terms of like the DC animated movies. And I just felt like they just reduced Vixen to a Black woman panting after a man she can't have. And it really bothered me that was the depiction of her. It really also annoyed me that Jon Stewart selected Hot Girl over Vixen, who he probably had more in common with than this alien being with wings. And Hot Girl was a damaged individual anyway. And so it just really annoyed me that, and he did get with Vixen and he did get with Hot Girl. And I just hated that triangle. I'm like, you guys are the most powerful people in the Watchtower. And this is what you're worried about? Like, it just really annoyed me. I didn't feel like either partner got what I don't think Jon Stewart got the relationship he wanted from Hot Girl. I don't think Vixen got the relationship she wanted from Jon Stewart. And it was a mess. It was a proverbial train wreck. And I'm like, why are y'all spending episodes on this? Show me the one where Batman and Wonder Woman fall in love again and he's super awkward because he's a boy, right? So I want to see that episode. I want to see other stuff. And it was just really that triangle couple made me very disappointed with Justice League at that time.
Well, the relationship that I'm going like, no, really no, we can't be having that, is in the current Legion of Superheroes, when they've brought Superman's son, John Kent, who was aged up, which fans just, their heads explode at the thought of that. And then they brought him forward to help the Legion of Superheroes learn how to be superheroes and keep peace in the galaxy. And Saturn Girl put the moves on him. And I'm kind of like, no, I'm sorry. No, it's Team Garth. We can't have this. No. And it bothers me tremendously. And I think it bothers me tremendously in part because now in the issue prior to this one, she's wondering if she used her telepathic powers to kind of convince him to be attracted to her, which is like apostasy if you're a longtime Legion fan. Saturn Girl would never do that. So that's like head exploding territory to start with. And then Team Garth. And so that's me being an old fart fan and not really being open to newer possibilities. But I just was reading that and going, no. I said I was going to give this book a year before I made up my mind. I don't like this. Darin, did you want to?
I was gonna say, pretty much anytime they age somebody up and then do something like that, I always hate it. Like on Angel, where they age up Angel's son and then he's with Cordelia, I was like, what is happening? I'm like, no. Stop aging people up. I know that you want all your main characters to be permanently 35, but also want to have their kids be 35. And I'm like,
25. 25.
Well, I was going to say 25.
I think they've said that
everybody's got to be 25 now.
Ugh. Well, actually, this is a dislike that's not an old fart fan thing because it's Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. And Lois was injured. I forget whether she got amnesia or what, but she went into a hospital and the psychologist who was treating her put the moves on her. And that's problematic for so many different reasons.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is just squicky. It just... No, you should never do that.
As
so
someone whose day job is clinician, that's just no.
Right.
No. What are the only two letters between M and P? N-O.
Yeah, it was kind of icky. So
indeed.
If anybody want to add anything on this before we move on? No?
I was just gonna say that I just have just a little bit of rage about Hulk and Black Widow.
Oh my gosh, yes.
In the Marvel universe. Yeah. I liked their relationship. I thought
As
they did a good
friends.
job, but I don't understand why, if they're gonna go through and do all of that she basically gets a bench thrown in the lake. That's it. That's all she gets. Oh, and at the very end, Bruce tearfully tells everyone how he tried to go back in time and find her, but he couldn't.
Well,
What?
see,
That's just, they completely just threw that whole thing. And it was nothing but the writers couldn't figure out what to do with it.
I'm going to circle right in and like, I'm like coming up alongside you to like fight with this one because, when you get to the end of all the Avengers movies and we have a 4-hour saying goodbye to RDJ, and I'm like, hey guys, guess what? 2 Avengers died to save the universe, and one of them got a big send-off that lasted like the better part of a year, and the other one kind of got forgot. I'm like, Natasha died too, and quite frankly, Natasha did it on purpose, and Tony did it by mistake. So,
right.
If you really want to talk about sacrifices, where's Natasha's 27-hour send-off at the end of the Avengers movie? And she got her own movie. Iron Man got 3. Don't care.
Right.
Let Natasha have her minute. So that's Darin.
I actually think they're going to bring her back.
Well, it is comic books that
It is
territory,
comic books, so they might. They
Only
might.
one person stays dead, and that's Uncle Ben.
So
Right.
I didn't like the fact either that they put Bruce with Black Widow. I didn't ever feel like that relationship was authentic. It reminds me of the time they paired Seven of Nine with Chakotay on Star Trek Voyager. And I'm like, what the heck is this? They
Yeah.
have zero chemistry. They don't have
Zero.
anything in common. What the heck are y'all doing? And I felt that way about Bruce and Natasha as well. I was like, this doesn't work. Like, it just doesn't work. They spent a lot of time with her and Cap the whole Winter Soldier
Yeah.
movie, and then the
Yeah.
great chemistry, it looked like it was going somewhere, and then they abandoned it to have him make out with
See, and they
so-and-so's
just never.
niece. And
Yeah, they
it's
never.
like, what?
They never knew what to do with Captain America because they kind of wrote themselves into a corner with Peggy
Yeah.
Carter.
Yeah.
And so it's like they're like, oh, but Chris Evans is so good looking, and we just really want to watch him make out with some hot chick. but then they have this whole thing with Peggy, and they're like, well, we can't betray Peggy. We just can't.
Yeah, but she's been
So-
dead, like 100 years. So.
Years, right? So
Right, exactly.
it just
Exactly.
didn't feel natural, and so
Yeah, no, it never did.
and that could be because they've had all these different directors directing all these different types of films, and all of them are men.
Yes.
So no one is thinking about that thread of what the female character is doing, right? And so I feel like a lot of that has to do with that as well. Like, I feel like a lot of that just did not feel authentic at all. I'm like, I don't buy it. I want my money back. Give me 10 cents for more popcorn, because this is not.
And I got to agree with both of you, because I think that one of the things that bothered me most about it was a completely unequal relationship the other way. Natasha was the one with all the power in that situation, because she's the one who could calm him down and, make him, and then once he's sort of on the level and he's like Dr. Banner Hulk all the time, then he doesn't need that. And then they start I just thought it was weird.
It was weird.
Yeah.
You were not alone.
They just didn't know what to do with it, so they dropped it.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, my favorite Natasha relationship is Daredevil. The period when she was co-starring in the Daredevil comic book.
Oh, right.
Those comic books.
I have some of those. Yes.
Yeah. And Elektra's an interesting character, and in some ways she's a more complex character. But I really liked the way, and I can't remember who wrote that run, but the writer played off Natasha and Matt against each other really nicely.
And it was really nice whenever they circled back around during the Frank Miller run and had her come back and do the guest appearance in 188. That was really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you could pick any two characters, they don't have to be in the same comic book universe, and put them in a relationship and do a 12-issue miniseries with it, because you're all writers, which two characters would you pick?
Oh, wow.
Alexandra, let's start with you.
This is literally right off the top of my head. Captain America and Wonder Woman. I think they would be awesome. I think they're complete equals. I think that they both have that kind of childlike innocence, because she's so sheltered, having been, kind of on the Amazonian island, and then he's so sheltered because, he's from the 1940s and he was in ice for 50 years or 70 years or however long it is. I think they would be really, really cool. They'd either be really, really good and it would be really, really hot, or they'd be really, really boring.
And the good news is her last boyfriend was Steve, so she wouldn't yell the wrong name.
Right, exactly.
Getting down to practical.
Exactly.
So why don't you go next, Darin?
Oh, I'm not ready. Gail.
I'm saying Natasha and Captain America, just because there's so much potential there for all kinds of beautiful tension, and Chris Evans has a
Asses.
great
Go ahead and
butt.
say it. Asses.
Yes, Captain America's
Beautiful
ass.
asses.
Beautiful assets. But the whole America, Russia, the whole, she's, so much more. He's, the Boy Scout and she's the assassin. And so you kind of got this, she could pull him a little to the dark side and this could be fun. Yeah, I'd watch that.
Oh yeah. Dark side Captain America, sign me up. And not like Hydra Captain America, just kind of, sort of dark side. Just
I thought for a second
little
there
bit
you were suggesting they
Captain
pair up-
America with just a little bit of whips and chains or something.
For a minute there, I thought you were actually suggesting they pair up Darkseid and Captain America, and I was like,
Well, shipping
Now there's a couple.
no!
You are presuming a much deeper knowledge of comics than I possess.
Anybody else?
I'm going to go Thanos and Darkseid because I would just like to see how that relationship would work out.
Oh my gosh.
I'd like to see Green Lantern and Captain Marvel.
Which Green Lantern?
Green Lantern.
The only one I know is the one from the movie. So because I
Hal.
didn't read the comics. Yeah, Hal
Hal.
Jordan, I guess. So just because I think that the Green Lantern movie was so bad.
Yeah, no.
And yet the Green Lantern character is so cool that I'd like to see the Green Lantern character with Captain Marvel because I think they kind of got the whole space vibe going.
They do.
They know what's going on out there, and
that'd be
Well,
cool.
and if you bring a whole new audience into comics, I think you should really consider pairing up Captain America and Aquaman.
yeah, you'd get a whole new audience then.
Yeah.
The best butts in comics.
Just, you just
words.
call their movie Sandwich. That's what my version of it would be. Sandwich. Sorry.
It'd be a hero.
That's amazing.
Darren, you didn't like that one? Come on.
That's amazing. Darren's like, why did I agree to be on this panel?
I know. I'm just digging it.
So if I had to pick two characters that I would like to see together, I would pick Nubia because she's an Amazonian and I would love to see her with T'Challa.
Yeah.
Now,
Just because of theatrics that would incur in the palace, right? She's
Yeah.
like, he's already used to being around strong women though. And so but it would be Nubia who would have like the major kind of adjusting to do, but she'd also have like these other powerful women to hang out with and to do like fun things with, like battle and practice at swords and stuff, and she would still have and she'd still be there. I think that would be awesome.
Well, I would pick Jessica Cruz, the Green Lantern, and Thor.
Oh,
Because Jessica's a spacefaring character, and so she needs a character on a big scale.
Mm-hmm.
And they sort of hinted in Justice League Odyssey of seeds of a relationship between Jessica and Cyborg. And that would be nice too. But I was
that would be
thinking
nice.
across universes,
Mm-hmm.
Thor's the one who comes
Yeah,
from-
I can see that. Ooh, that's
so-
a good one.
Well, you may have noticed that we have not discussed WandaVision during this panel, despite the fact that some of us are really into it. Upon reflection, we decided that a discussion of the show might spoil it for those who haven't seen it yet. So check us on a future episode when we will be discussing WandaVision. Thank you.
Good one.
Well, we're coming up on time, so this seems like a good place to stop. So why don't we go around and everybody can say where people can find information about you and your material, and then we'll wrap up. So Darin, let's start with you.
you can find me at darinkennedy.com. I have social media, Facebook, Twitter, and you can look up my books on Amazon under Darin Kennedy.
Nicole?
You can find me at NicoleGibbonsKurtz.net. I'm on Amazon as Nicole Gibbons Kurtz and on Twitter and Facebook.
Gail?
I'm findable as Gail Z. Martin and Morgan Bryce. That's BRICE. And on the Gail, make sure you put the Z in there. But that's the .com, the Facebook, the Twitter, and you can find all my books on Amazon as well as other places.
Alexandra?
My website is kind of in flux right now for many, many reasons. So it's probably easier just to search me. I am on Facebook as Alexandra Christian. And I just rejoined Twitter. Everybody throw me a party. So I'm at Lexi, Lexxie Christian, on Twitter. So find me.
Jeannie?
I'm at jeanneadams.com and on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest and all those social media things. And most likely you'll find me on Twitter, where I spend way too much time.
Well, thank you all for joining me this evening. And thank you to our sponsors, Heroes Aren't Hard to Find and the Heroes Convention. And thank you to all of you who are watching this episode.